Okay, there is some dispute about who knew what when, but I say that Hesiod was, in my mind, the first, and he was divinely inspired by the Muses, who were divine creatures, daughters of Zeus. Now, I want to talk about Ovid, who didn't write until Julius Caesar's time, which was right about the same time as Christ. Now, what did Ovid write? He wrote the Magnus Opus, which was the history of the earth, by all the previous authors, and he referred to Hesiod quite a bit. Now, what did Metamorphosis state? It talked about the gods, and he had all kinds of books: the Divine Comedy, the Avenging Gods, the Pathos, the Roman, the Divine Rulers. Now, he had all these different books. Now, it starts out the creation, the ages of mankind, the flood. Okay, that's the flood. Deucalion, who is Noah. Pyrrha, who is Noah's wife. Apollo, Daphne, Phaeton. It goes down to book 4, the 5 daughters of. All of these are the ancient Greek gods and Roman gods. Now, it starts right off by saying, Metamorphosis. That was the name of his work. Or transformation is a unifying theme amongst the episodes of the Metamorphosis. All right, this is his book. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the first couple of sentences of the poem. They called them poems or books. And he said, "In nova fertanamus mutatus decree forum corpora." That's a little Greek for you there. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. What does that mean? It says, accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. That's what we're seeing all over the earth. This theme amalgamates the much explored opposition between the hunted and the hunter, and the thematic tension between art and nature. And then they go on to get theological about it. But what it says is that they could transform themselves into anything. It's a great variety among the types of transformations, from human to inanimate objects like the Nile River or constellations. Animals, from animals and ants and funguses into mushrooms, into humans, into different sexes, different colors, into pebbles. They can do anything they want. And they did. And they transformed themselves into godlike, handsome creatures to come down and have sex with all of the vulnerable female women, and that's what ended up causing the issue with
the giants.
Yeah, Jupiter had to put an end to it. They didn't realize what was going to happen. I don't think. I really don't know, but it appears to me it all points to the fact, like Satan was Jupiter, and he was put in charge of this solar system, and he took advantage of it, or he signed a pact with a whole bunch of other dragon guys or whatever they were, and they came down and did what they wanted with the women, and then it became giants, and then they had to close that case.
There's so much stuff here coming together. I never even saw this part. This seems to be consistent with what the Bible says about the fallen angels that you mentioned coming down to earth, having sex with the females. And obviously, the fallen angels had to metamorphose themselves in order to mate with the women. In other words, the angels had to show up in human form at some point.
Right, and when they say they're godlike, yeah, they all turn themselves into real handsome, muscular, amorous gods.
Right.
Hold on one second, Jim. Give me 1 second. All right, so Jim and I have been talking. Now, in a second, I'm going to show you something very graphic, because I showed you what I claim to be a female body part from Jupiter, which gave birth to the planet Venus. However, I at this point want to reinforce my statements about the dragon. Remember I said his tail was huge and flared? You see this? This is the top of North Africa. Exactly where his tail would be. Now, what about over here? This is where his neck would have been cut right there. And it looks like it's cut to me. So this is the dragon. And underneath is a couple of different ways to look at it. Jim was saying maybe this was what the dragon spit out. And that could be. I sort of thought this was Atlantis, that they were showing this real fancy looking place with all their gold balls and all that stuff on top of it, and then traders going in from there into the interior to pick up the gold. Because there's a whole other story about the gold and why there was so much gold in certain places, and I understand that, and I understand why the gold collected. It's nothing more than layering. It's nothing more than layering, specific gravity. But anyway, that's a whole another story. Now, I remember I told you graphic, get ready, graphic. Remember, this is up on Venus, on Jupiter, and I say it was the birth canal of Venus, and this is that little spot, this little tag right at the bottom. You see that?
Yeah.
All right, pay close attention to that, and then watch this. This is the exact same spot.
Wow. Good gracious. Yeah.
There is no difference here, what we're looking at, zero. And this is where the birth canal was, and that's what it is. So, they all seem to do the same thing. And out comes a planet in this particular case. Now, apparently some of them were, the vast majority were moons. Or I don't know, maybe Jupiter popped them all out. I have no idea at this point. But I can tell you what, there were dragons of the size of Typhon. Exactly what it says. That's exactly what it is. And this is all the spit coming down. Now, I didn't finish up with his body. All right, spitting all this stuff down. But all of this is this toxic stuff. And it hit his fin up here and literally combusted. As much as you can see, that's a serious amount of interaction.
Yeah.
You see over here, it almost looks like it is combusting.
Right.
All right, I would say...
Where they got the term Spitfire from is from a dragon?
I don't know, it could be, but I can tell you what, I would not want to be standing there.
No, right.
Now, here's what it did. It literally ate through the fin down here and attacked the vital flesh right here. Now, here's another spot that could be actually fire.
I see. It's darker or redder. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got that. Well, you can see it down here. It's red, red, red.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it wouldn't be on fire now, but
yeah,
it's
singed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. It's got that cinnamon look to it from being toasted.
Right.
Now, all of that stuff, which is fluids from the fish, from the dragon, you're following it down, right? You see where it's going?
Right, I see it.
Okay, now, it's on his back. This yellow stuff is extremely invasive and toxic. And it's coming in and literally eating the flesh off of his body.
Must be like an acid or something.
Exactly. I would say that's very, very likely. It's got some dissolving characteristic to it. What that is, I don't know. But it as it flushes down, you see, I'm gonna follow this down straight from here down. It's coming flushing down this whole system and hitting the fish. Now the fish is presenting it with lymphatic fluids. This pink stuff is lymph fluids. And it's going to try to take that stuff away and bring it over to the lymph nodes. Watch. Follow this down. You see where I'm going with this?
Right.
That is lymph fluids.
Okay.
And they're heading over here to the lymph nodes.
Try to detoxify it.
And here's some more of it coming down this way here. See it coming down? It's all coming down and attacking. And then it ends up getting into the lymph, which is this pink stuff. Lymph is pink. Blood is red, the artery. Vein blood is bluish, black in the case of mud fossils. And the lymph is tan. And look here. It's going into that lymph node. Remember? I think we looked at this the other day, remember?
Right.
All right, the right side is the lymph coming in, and it should be getting detoxified and then going back out, but it's going out black. I think it's just dying.
Right.
And remember the little webbing, all that little webbing that was down here?
Right.
This, I think, is a filtration system.
Okay, so the poison itself is ruining the lymph gland.
Correct. It's killing it. That's what happens in lymphoma. You need to have the bacteria inside the lymph nodes to detoxify what's coming in, because the bacteria make the enzymes.
Okay.
Right? We talked about the enzymes, right? There's the most elegant chemistry that you can possibly make, and they break other chemistry, hundreds of thousands of them per second. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But it can only withstand so much.
Right.
And this is just way too much. You see it all coming down here, all that green stuff?
Right.
The lymph is coming over, grabbing a hold of the green stuff and bringing it down into the lymph nodes. You see it's coming down, it's trying to get it out of there, but it can't. As soon as it hits the lymph node, it kills it.
Right.
So instead of coming out of here nice and brown, it's coming out black and dead.
Right.
That should have come out of here nice and tan looking, just like over this side.
Yeah.
And you don't see big black patches on creatures' bodies unless it's lymphoma. That's what lymphoma looks like, cancer.
Okay.
Same stuff.
Right.
All of these are being attacked. You see all of that stuff?
Right.
All right, now you'd see this, and as a geologist, if I came to you and you had no idea what to look for, and I said to you, Jim, explain to me what's going on there, what would you say?
If I was looking at it just as a geologist, I would say those are some spots where some minerals exist. You know, they're just isolated spots. See, I would have had it backwards. I would have thought those were areas of high mineral concentration, and the rain was washing the minerals out of the soil. See, I would have had it exactly backwards.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that beautiful? I love it.
Yeah. Whereas, see, you've got it for where the lymph is entering that lymph node, and you know it's filtering through it and going out the other side. To me, I would have looked at that and said, "Oh, that's a hill, Roger, or a mountain, and the minerals are being washed out or something."
You know, and at this point, it probably is, because there's no more infusion from the pumping.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know
so
what
nowadays,
I mean? Yeah, in your body, you still have all that lymph flowing through you under pressure.
Yes. Okay.
And your blood pressure is established in the last little bits and pieces. You got your veins, you got your
your capillaries. Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Right. So let's go to where it's washed off the system, and we can see the veins, the arteries, and the whole shooting match. And here it is right here. So he's coming down on them, and it ate through everything. So now let's go right down to the blood vessel level. Let's look over here, because this is coming down here is the artery. All right,
Right.
artery, 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 artery. All off the artery, you got a bazillion little blood
Right.
vessels. Bazillions of them, all over the place.
Right.
And at the end of all of them, you have the capillaries.
Right.
And the capillaries are where your blood pressure is established. And they drain into the veins. It takes a while for it to settle in, but you can get to the point where you can see it really pretty clearly.
Maybe point out, for at least for me, where you see an artery supplying blood to a tissue, and then the vein picking it up on the other side. Maybe if you could walk me through that.
All right.
That would help.
All right, here's the way it is right here. All right, let's look at all of this major highways. And then you see all the little bits coming off.
Right.
Those are the major one is the artery.
Okay.
The little branches are the blood vessels.
Okay.
And then when you get down here, coming out of the blood vessels, at the very tips, you see way down here?
Right.
Give it a second to settle in.
Yeah.
At the very tip, this is where your blood pressure is established, right there.
Right there. Okay.
And they squirt that into that vein pickup that runs all the way down, you see? That's all vein blood.
Okay, so all the black is the vein returning the blood back to the heart, and then over and over again.
Correct.
It takes it right back to the heart, and then it gets oxygenated at the lungs. Well, in the case of the fish, in the gills, I guess, and then it returns through the arteries.
Yeah, well, there's a little more to it than that. Yeah, you got to go through the kidneys and your liver, and it's got to go through all the different organs in your body. The blood,
Right.
And it will grab a hold of whatever it needs for what they call enzymes.
Okay, but this is real time. You're showing real time shows, but you're showing the interface between the artery supplying the blood to the tissue, and then you have a collection system being the veins picking up the deoxygenated blood.
Yeah, it's at this point, the blood is no longer viable. It's in the best case scenario, I would assume this is just platelets and so forth that don't have any real energetic value left to them.
Right. And, okay.
No oxygen, and that's FeO2 and FeO3. Fe2O2 and Fe2O3 is the two different oxygenation states. This is the O3 here, coming
Okay.
down.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
All right.
That makes sense. That helps.
Yeah, good. I'm glad it's working for you. And it comes to the very end here, and then it filters itself into the black bloodstream.
Right. I'll tell you why this helps so much is because, see, if you're looking at this this picture here from a geography or a geologic point of view, you would look at it backwards, because you would think that the flow is going in the reverse. You would assume I'm looking at a mountain range.
Well, here, let
Looking at
me just check something, Jim. Hold on a second. We got elevation 1430 right there. Now,
Okay.
down here, we got elevation 1464. So it's going down this direction. All right. Now,
Okay.
originally it was coming this direction. See,
Right.
it's hard to say, but it's all biology.
Yeah, well, that's the point I'm trying to make. Nowadays, the flow is going from 1460 back to 1430.
Right.
So if you were looking at this from a map maker's point of view, you'd say, "Oh, okay, that's a drainage system going from the black back to the white." But when it was living tissue, the flow was in the other direction.
Right, it was being pumped.
Right, it's under pressure, correct.
Right, so sometimes you're going to find these rivers running down, sometimes they're running up. It depends on how the guy was laying. So if this side of his body was up and this side of his body was down, these would have to go up. You know what I'm saying?
Right, I got you.
Because there's so many variations here. But I can tell you one thing. You see this? I'm going to blow your mind. If your mind's still unblown. Now, you see, and I've shown you quite clearly, coming off of these main arteries, is all these little branches.
Yeah.
All right, those are the blood vessels. Now, like I said, laying down, standing up, all kind of different ways. Now, I'm going to show you something. Hold on a second. All right. What I want you to pay attention to is all of these little blood vessels coming off of a main artery. Now, if that was laying down and piled up high above it, it would be a tube coming out with a whole bunch of little crab legs, if you can understand what I'm showing you. And I will show you right now. Here is one. There it is right there. All right, this is the blood vessel. All right, the artery. These are the little legs that are going out to service this sarcomeres. You see these sarcomeres?
Right.
You see those little stripes right next to it? This is down here.
Okay.
All right, so it's way down here at the bottom. And this is all pumped up. But it's servicing these muscle sarcomeres. And these are the sarcomeres right here. You see these little blocks?
Yeah.
And the little stripes in between them?
Right.
I can show you what a muscle sarcomere is and an artery. This is the artery. The vein is right above it. The vein doesn't have all the little legs like the arteries. Remember, the vein's just one little tube. And
that would make sense because the vein doesn't supply tissue. The vein is a collector.
That's all it is. It's just a sucker. Yep. So this is what embeds into muscle so the muscle can have enough oxygen and flow of blood. And I'll show you these exact same structures. All right, here they are right here in a rock. These are the same structures, and that's the blood. The red is the blood running through it. Now, that's a rock, and that was what I just showed you here. Now, here's the muscle sarcomeres. Where did I go? Here they are right here. You see them?
This is muscle tissue right here?
Correct. This
is real anatomy here.
Correct. This is exactly what I just showed you in that rock. And there's this rock I just showed you right here.
Right.
Is exactly the same thing. These are the actual red blood cells and muscle sarcomeres that pinch together. The white pinches into the red and they could get contracted. This is just relaxed. Now all of that red blood is what you find running in between all of the connective tissue, all of the muscles, to provide oxygen and nutrients. And this is what happened over in Turkey. All of that stuff ran out from under that big, huge thing over there and an olive grove, and the whole thing collapsed. It's identical, no difference whatsoever, black and white stripes. I looked at it very carefully. There's no question whatsoever. And you can see the red blood running out of it. And it all ran out down the hill. And then the whole thing just collapsed one day.
Oh, once the blood got out, it just collapsed.
Yeah, it just collapsed. There was nothing to hold it up again. It just fell down. And it wasn't just one crack. The whole thing sunk, a gigantic amount. So these are the sarcomeres. Remember, these are the sarcomeres.
Okay.
All right, now, here's where they're pinched together. See the bottom ones?
This is an actual medical photograph here.
Correct. So the white ones really are the connective tissue, and they don't erode away. So you get all these little stripy white ones. But then the red stuff erodes away as red fleshy mud. Literally mud. Literally mud. When they're together like this, the red and the white is all glued together. When they're relaxed, they're like the red and the white is just separated.
That makes sense.
Where these lines go up and down, they will separate. They'll run out because all they are is glued together. Those blocks are literally glued together.
Okay.
All right, now watch this. All right, remember, here they are again. This is what they look like. They're literally glued together. And that's the red and the white. And you see, remember the band going right down the middle and the stripes on the side?
Right.
All that red blood ran out. In the turkey one. All ran out and it just collapsed.
So the brown in this image, what is the blood?
Yeah, exactly. It's just red blood cells.
Okay.
And that's
where your iron clay would be, and it would wash out over the years.
Correct. It forms literally mud.
Okay, that makes sense.
It turns into mud. You see the little black spots here and there? There's some little vein spots that are pulling the black back out of here. You see them down there? Because no matter where you have the red, you still got to be able to get the black out of there.
Right.
Now, again, this is the one, and these are the sarcomeres right next to the blood, so the artery.
And that's a cross section of the artery, and a vein is on top of that.
Correct. And this, because it's on Mars, there's very little. There's no water erosion. You see all the dust underneath here? You see all that dust?
Oh, now it. So there's no. They don't have the rain on Mars that we have, so none of that was caused by.
Right, it's just it basically sandblasts. I'm not show you, it does sandblast. Now, all of this red up here, you see all of that red dust, they call it the red planet. It's because there's nothing but body parts have eroded the red dust out of it. So that's why
And that would originate from iron-rich blood.
Right, iron oxides, yes, exactly. Now, watch this now. I have exactly the same thing here. This is the exact same thing. This was an artery. And it shot out all of that red blood all over here, and it used it up. You see some red spots here, red spot here, red spot here, how it's in the muscle tissue. On Earth, they erode, so they just, all that turned into like mud.
Right.
All right. This right here is muscle. From here forward is muscle. And these are the abrupt transitions. You see right here an abrupt transition?
Right.
Right here is an abrupt transition.
Right.
There's different chunks. But before that, this little spot right here, from where my cursor is here, up to here, is where the tendon is. And that is tough as hell. That is the tendon. And this ball right at the end here is the major anchor. And that's why this is brown and not pink. There's almost no stretching in this at all. That was glued to a bone. And here's the bone. Hold on. All right, here's what it looks like when it was all together. There's the bone. This is the muscle that I'm showing up above. This is the spot right here. There's nothing tougher on the face of the planet. This locked right into this bone. You following this?
Yes, right.
All right. This right here is the tendon. And it's tough. Now, if you look at it here, you can see this part here is pink. That's because it's being fed with all that blood.
Okay.
All right, that's the sarcomeres that we saw before that had all the blood running out of them on Mars. It would have all eroded away. Here it's still It's not big. It's not big enough to see them individually like up there. Although I can see them in the microscope. Now over here, though, totally different story. There's this brown station right here, straight up and down. That whole, like if you took this corner right here of the screen, that right there is nothing but a solid chunk of just toughness. And I saw one in the ocean. And here it is right here. Here it is. Go ahead.
The sarcomere? Is this pure sarcomere right here?
This is tendon.
Oh, this is tendon.
The sarcomeres would have run to the front of this. You see this big white strip and the round ball right there?
Right.
That is the center of a tendon enthesis of some major, like a shoulder or a hip or something. Now, up here you have all these membranes. You see them?
Okay, yeah.
They can slide back and forth on each other. They're all independent from each other, so they can slide and twist around. That's why your body can move so well. The one in the center, no. That one there is the anchor. Now you see down. Go ahead.
Is that like limestone now nowadays?
They have all kind of different names. It depends on where it was formed. In this case, this white, I don't know exactly what you would call it, but probably limestone, yeah. It's connective tissue.
That's what I was asking you. Anatomically, what is it? And you're saying connective tissue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's very heavy. It's CaCO3 probably.
Well, that transformed into limestone because calcium carbonate is limestone.
Yeah, so that's what it's going to be, primarily. Now, there's going to be other inclusions in it, depending upon where the anchor embedded itself.
Right.
All right, now, every organ in your body has one of these anchors. Because just like the vagina I showed you has an anchor on it. They all have an anchor to hold them into something else.
Okay.
Now, wherever that anchor anchors, the chemistry could be extremely different. In your stomach, it's going to be way different than it is in your lung.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so there's no getting around what the end result is going to be. But in this particular case, I can see it, no question. They say millions of years in one picture. This was probably a couple of hours the thing died. Because that is that exact piece, and I'm 100% sure of that. And that's this right here.
Oh, I got a question for you at this point.
Yeah.
In anatomical space, forget geology for a minute, but if you're talking about anatomy, is connective tissue vascularized in the same way as muscle tissue? In other words, what I'm asking you, what nourishes, how does the connective tissue get its nourishment? Are there blood vessels and veins that pass through that too? Or does it just...
Well, all right, let's take the exact position in the body, because they all have a different... well, let me just show you something. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm back with Jim. We're going to go over some things. Now, Jim just mentioned, and I cut him right off, he said, I've been watching this stuff for 40 years, and and I said, wait, don't say another word. I want you to say it like it happened to you, like your life was. And I want to make another mention that's very important, is that I was talking to a guy who's got 4 kids. And the kids are very young. I think their youngest was 7 and the oldest was 13. And he said, we watch your stuff all the time. And I said, you got 4 kids, they go to school, what do they say at school? He said, well, I guess one of his kids sort of got in trouble for speaking back, but not, I don't know what it was, how they spoke back or what, but they just didn't want to hear what he had to say, apparently. I don't know. And this is what happens is, this is not well received. This is a complete overthrow of everything that you've been taught, basically. I'm serious. Basically everything. Right, Jim? What do you think? Do you have something that you'd like to endorse?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've I've been looking at maps since about, seriously looking at maps since probably 1968, 69, 70, when I first got interested in topographic maps and, these types of maps. And then when I became a geologist in about 1976, 77 time frame, then maps were a big part of my study area, including cross sections and overheads. But I've looked ever since then at geological strata, and I've only looked at it from a geological point of view. Like, here you go, like these striations. My mind would have automatically said, okay, this is either a windswept environmental that this rock was formed in, or a water swept, or something. But my mind would have already gone to, how was this rock formed? It would have never dawned on me that this is tissue. And the more I look at this, the more I know I see a need to study anatomy, because every time I look at these, now I'm seeing it more from an anatomical point of view. I'm starting to see muscle striations. There's consistency in this. There, you can see lamination. The same laminations you see in rock, they show up in muscle tissue.
Absolutely, no question whatsoever. And the red blood up here, coming out of each one of these arteries, that's an artery, that's an artery, that's an artery. You see the red blood flowing out of them? Up here
Right.
was just a big puddle of blood. And on the other side of this, it's just a slab of blood. And this was a very powerful chunk of, this is not small. This is maybe, I don't know. It's good size. Anyway, yes, that's muscle. There's no question. Now look at this. You see this?
Yeah.
This is on Mars. Now, the first one I showed you was the Mars crab. And that one, you understood that one was feeding the muscle. I don't think we have to go too much further with that, right? Hold on, where's it going?
That was a cross-sectional view of an artery. And you showed the small arterioles coming off of it.
Right.
Is that right?
Yep.
So,
That's exactly right there, and these are the sarcomeres.
and so that artery is serving those sarcomeres right and left.
Correct.
Okay.
Now mine would have looked just like that with the little arms coming out, but they're just worn away, and there's a cavity there, complete cavity. This doesn't have that kind of stuff, and that's why you're going to see this right here. Now look, I talked to you about weathering. This is sandblasted. You know what sandblasting does.
Yes.
If I showed you that, what would you say? How was that done?
Well, I would have thought the wind did it if it was on Mars.
Yeah, because there's no moisture.
Right.
Now, why is this little squishy stuff here, and all these stretched out looking things here? Why is that going on?
Well, if I was looking at it from a geographical point of view, really I wouldn't have an answer for you. I would think the wind did half of it, and I don't know what happened in the part that's not stretched out there. I wouldn't have an answer for you, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, nobody does, because until you take it as biological. You want to see what it is biological?
I would love to see it.
Well, you get yourself ready. All right. Best way just to explain this is I just showed you how gigantically enormous these blood vessels and sarcomeres were. And this, my friends, is nothing more than what they call interstitium. And the reason this is stretched here and gathered together here and gathered together here and a little stretch there, and down at the bottom all we see is balls, is because these balls were the tough spot. Very, very, very tough. The straps were anchored to these balls. So you could pull your skin here and there, and it would come back to looking like it does up at the top. You see up at the top here, it's sort of all in the same sort of configuration, but in places it's real squinched together, and in places it's real stretched apart. Now, because of the sandblasting, it's worn down some of the straps, but the balls pretty much remain. The balls are tough. Now, can I show you that in human anatomy? I absolutely can. And this right here, my friends, is human anatomy. That is what they call interstitium. That's what you just saw. Now think of this. This is a flexible fabric. And laying down on the Mars terrain, which is another creature, I don't care what anybody says, it's just that everything's creatures. Those balls were attached to straps. Some of the straps were stretched and worn away. Some of them aren't stretched. Some of them are pinched together. And that's what this does. Now, this is what it looks like inside the body. That's how many of these balls there is. They are everywhere inside of here. Nobody's ever even looked at them before. They're so tiny, you just can't hardly see them. And then above that is the skin. And in the middle is the interstitial highway, which they've never even known about before. This is a brand new organ. I'm not kidding you. Now, this is these same balls right here. And
this is on Earth here, correct?
Exactly. These are called the Moki marbles. And they're literally everywhere on Earth, because everywhere on Earth had some kind of fascia and some kind of these little anchors were everywhere. I mean, I'm serious, everywhere. And they just they call them concretions. Now, all the stuff that was on top of here turned into mud and washed away, because this is Earth. Mars, different story. Now, this is Earth too. This is over United Kingdom, Hunstanton's Beach, Hunstanton's Cliff. This up here at the top is the mucosa. That's literally the skin. This little the really red spot right underneath here is this new interstitial layer that they just really discovered. Even they exist just a few years ago. And the black balls were anchored into this flesh. And as the flesh eroded and turned into this mud, brown mud down here, the balls just collected. They're tough. They're the tough spot, and that's why they anchor.
So the sea level itself is what came up against that cliff there and washed the red out of that layer, that red layer, right? It washed the blood out and left those tough anchor balls.
Exactly. And you see these anchor balls? There's biology growing on there. Those are still loaded with nutrients. That's why in a lot of places you'll see these are just completely covered with bacteria and algae and all kinds
barnacles.
of little,
it's like barnacles.
Every kind of plant life. They support all of the corals and things too.
Something died. Some creature died there.
Yeah.
And as its skin layer began to decompose, then the ocean washed out the softer stuff and left those more sturdy balls there.
Right, but the balls still have a lot of nutritional value. I have some that show they're green ones. They look like green mice. They're everywhere. Just like these little ones over here. Only they're just, every one of them's coated like a little green mice. Really, really cool looking. But anyway, that's the surface of the Earth. It's covered with biology. Now,
so
go ahead.
If you were to look at a micrograph of your skin, is that what you would see? You would see those tough balls in your skin if you looked at a high-powered micrograph.
Well, yeah. Yeah, this is what it is. It's going to be this interstitium. When it's laying flat like that, that's what it exactly looked like. And here's what it is in a human body. And again, they just discovered this. Well, here it is right here. Meet your interstitium, newfound organ.
Well, that's an actual skin shot.
Exactly. See all those little balls?
Yeah.
Those are the balls we're talking about. They didn't even know this was here. By the time they got them into autopsies, and I know people that do autopsies, they came in flat like a pancake because they wash them and they do all kinds of things with fluids in the body before they prep them to be delivered to the autopsy people that do the deep stuff. And by then it's just flat as a pancake. But I could see them in my mud fossils, and I got a hold of a guy 10 years ago, more than that, and I said, what is all this stuff? You know what, it's just fascia. I said, no. He says, yeah, we call it fuzz. It doesn't have any function. I said, no, come on. I said, something's going on here. And sure enough, it's now the biggest organ in the human body.
Oh my God! And that's 2018.
Yeah, they just wrote the article on it. I know the people that did this. I mean, I don't know him personally, Dr. Tice, but I know people that know him and who I had been working with for years prior to this, discussing this layer, because it's in all my mud fossils. You know, they died and nobody prepped them. They just died laying there. So all these layers are between, you know, the outside skin, then there's a layer of membrane on every single one. 100% have a coating, then a membrane, then you get to the vital flesh. Every single one, 100%. And all the organs, all of the blood vessels, everything. And even the neurological parts in the brain and all of the sheathing that coats nerve fibers is made out of collagens, and you need a specific collagen to coat those, otherwise your nerves will short out and everything else. They're discovering a lot of things they hadn't really paid attention to because they've never really had them in a condition where they could see the details.
Right.
And you see what we're looking at a fish that's the size of the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, you can learn a lot from this. You see that?
Yeah.
I mean, there is
much more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just happens to be that Appolodorus and Ovid and Plutarch and all of those guys, Plato, they all wrote the same story, and it just happens to be real. And it appears that Venus or Eros, one or the other, didn't make it.
Yeah, so the fish would be Venus, probably, and Eros could possibly be where the eye of the Sahara is, whatever that creature might be, a shrimp or a squid or something smaller.
I don't know. This is a good size eye. That eye
yeah,
right
you're
there.
Right.
That's a big eye. I don't think it's any smaller than the one that's here for the fish.
You know, I agree. Now that I look at that, so that creature there is just covered up more.
Now here's my problem. Now, if it was Venus and Eros, they were tied together, it says. And they would have, I would assume, just thinking off the top of my head, they were both alive at the same time. Now, if the fish landed on top of the other one, you know, the other one seems to be pretty eroded. I don't know. Who the hell knows?
Well, maybe the same poison permeated the fish and also killed that other creature.
It doesn't seem like it got that far down.
No, it didn't.
It got seriously into this fish, but as far as over here, I don't see it really getting down to damage this one if it was a whole nother fish. I don't know. You know, this is really mysterious, and you know, all you can do is look and try to guess at this point. But I can tell you what, there is nobody that can convince me that these things are not what they appear to be. And they are what they appear to be.
Right.
And remember it said the thighs of a human?
Yeah.
Now, this is it's hard to see because they're highly eroded. But if you came down from here, the thighs would start right up here and come down to where they hooked into viper coils that coiled way out to here.
Okay.
All right, and that out here is made of viper coil skin.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Look at that.
Go to any tannery and ask them what that is. And they'll say, well, that's probably ostrich leather.
Good gosh.
Think those are sand dunes?
Before I started watching these things, I would have said, what else could they be but sand dunes?
Well, how about coils from a viper? And he said it stretched all the way out, and there they are, squished right all the way out to here. Now, let's look at the legs, the thighs. So it would start here, and this is like a real strong part of the muscle area, I would assume. You got a lot of muscle-ish tissue with a lot of blood flow in this area, and it's running off to the side. Now, coming down, it starts to get gnarly down around the knee area and stuff, which is here.
Right.
All right, so they said the thighs, and then it turned into these scorpion things, which is what you're seeing here. This is the investment of some appendage that's coming down. You see them? They're locking in here. That is not a lymph node.
Right.
That is an attachment to those coils.
Okay.
So his thighs up here were humanish, and then below that coil attached here with all this snaky stuff.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? So
it really is.
now this snaky stuff comes down. You see it all the way down into the main body of this bendable part. Now the other one came down this way too. Same thing here. And this one came up and attached the same way.
Yeah.
And this was just in between the two legs. Now this one came down, and you can see it down here coming down, down, down. You see it?
Right.
So it's coming down. And then it sort of gets lost around here and there. But it might have just gone this way.
So one may be going off to the front and one to the back. Is that right?
One side goes to one side and one to the other. Now this, I have to tell you, I think this is the coil.
Okay.
And it's just all shredded up, or that's just its nature to be like that. But if we could give it a second to settle in here. It has some kind of texture to it, like that is biological.
Right.
It takes a while for these things to settle in.
Yeah. I've seen a painting of what somebody thought Typhon looked like, and it shows those coils down below the knees.
Yeah, oh yeah. Now you see this?
Yeah.
I don't think that's just runoff.
Mm-hmm.
They all have the same texture to it. See this one here?
They do.
So I would say that's part of his body.
Yeah.
And it's flowing down over the top of the fish. He was obviously attacking a fish. And this stuff here looks like it can separate and attack. I don't know, looks like it to me.
Maybe he was trying to grip the fish with his coils and hang on to it while he poisoned it.
Yeah. I would say that's a pretty good possibility. Because he's running over the top of him. See this here? At first I thought this was just mud. But I don't think so. I think this is that fleshy looking stuff.
Right.
I would go with the same stuff. Jim, hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Okay, here's the sarcomeres, which are muscle sarcomeres. Those are natural sarcomeres. The really dark stuff runs out and the white stuff remains. Now, this is what they look like when they're contracted. Now, I'm going to show you what Petra looks like. All right, Petra is nothing more than sarcomeres itself. And here's Petra from a long distance away. There's the treasury right there. That is literally, I'm not kidding you, literally carved into blood. That is the artery right there. You see these three converging channels there? Nobody carved those. Those are where there was a lot of blood flowing at one time and into one big, huge main artery. I showed you how that works. You have one huge one and then they flow off into other ones. They carved right into that and made Petra. And let's look at it closer. Now remember all these little blocks. Look at all these blocks everywhere. You see them? You see all those little lines, right, Jim?
Right.
You do see those, and you see the channel running down, the other channel running down, and the one running straight up down the bottom, and the treasury right in the middle. Well, let's see what it looks like when you get up close. All right, this is when you're right up close, right there. Now, you see those blocks right to the left here?
Right.
Those are sarcomeres. Those are those sarcomeres. You see the little stripy looking things, and then the other ones right next to them, block after block after block.
Right.
The thing in the middle here, there's no blocks. There's no blocks. The reason is his blood. That was where they carved right into the blood. So that way, when they did this, I would guess that it was semi-soft. And they put all those little holes in the side to let the moisture out so that it was hardened up and solid. They could probably scrape this down pretty quick if it was soft, which I believe it had to be.
I see. Okay, that helps explain how they did the carving.
Yeah. It has to be. You see this little red spot here and over here and over here and over here and over here? This was the bottom part of the artery. And all of that was filled in that big hole. That's nothing more than this right here, my friend. No difference whatsoever than, hold on, this could take a while, than that right there.
Wow, okay.
All right, so running all the way across here is the ground floor. They found an artery running out here feeding three different branches. And then they just chiseled into the blood. The blood was right there, and they just made their ways in and they made a treasury. Now, what's inside the treasury? Now, of course, this is on Mars. No difference. Right? And you saw the sarcomeres. These are the same sarcomeres as up on Mars. Well, this is on Mars, but the same as the treasury. Petra. All right, so let's go back to Petra. Nothing but blood. Nothing but blood. 100% blood. Sarcomeres, chiseled right out of there, which would have butted right up to the blood vessel. That's just how they work. Now, what's above that? Well, what's above it is this. All right, there's the sarcum. This is down below. It's just nothing but blood. 100% blood. No tissue in there whatsoever. None. Zero. And what's above? The same stuff that's in all the muscle right there. All that is connective tissue. All that white. You follow me, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's all we got is an artery, and then above it we got a connective tissue. You see that big round hole? That it could have been a lot of things, but the whole thing up there was the same as this. And this is what's inside the treasury is some connective tissues. This up here is just nothing more than red blood infiltrating some of the connective tissue. All right, so when they got inside of it, it looks to me like they hit some connective tissue, the side wall of the vein or artery or whatever. I mean, of the artery. This would have been an artery.
Right,
so
so
they nicked it or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
But that's it.
How deep is Petra carved back into the wall there?
I really don't know. I never did investigate it.
Well, that last image you showed before this is that the back wall of it? I mean, is that sort of the extent?
That's how I took it, because I can see this look like natural sunlight. So I would say that they're looking from this side over here in to the back wall.
Okay, so we could just guess maybe, I don't know, 40 feet, 30 feet.
Yeah, something like that. But I don't know. We could go further, but we can go with that. Okay. Let's say, but it's certainly interesting, my friend.
Yeah, right.
Anytime you see the white, it's connective tissue, or it could be the wall of the artery.
Right.
Right at the edge, and they just carving it out, and who knows? But it's all biology.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim was asking about who wrote this, and pretty much I go with Hesiod, but Ovid compiled everything together into Metamorphosis, was highly received, as much or more highly received and read than the Old Testament. And it says the majority of its stories do not originate with Ovid, but with such writers as Hesiod and Homer. For others, the poem is their sole source. So he's saying it's, I think they're trying to throw a little question mark into, how important this work is. And it is very important, because I can show you the things he's talking about seem to have validity to me.